The scorching double suns of Harlan beat down mercilessly on Verrett Jarrett's back as he scaled the jagged rock face. 6 hours of climbing through the treacherous terrain had left his skin darkened and raw, his eyelids stinging from the fine sand particles that perpetually hung in the thin atmosphere. His lungs worked overtime to extract enough oxygen from the planet's meager air supply. Still, he pressed on, navigating the labyrinthine canyons of the Zeli Ara territory with practiced precision. Ver paused to check his positioning device. The small screen confirmed he was approaching the outer boundaries of their settlement, a sprawling network of chambers and passages carved directly into the rust-colored cliff walls. Intelligence had indicated that the Zeli Ara were developing new energy weapons, potentially destabilizing the delicate balance of power in this sector. As a scout major for the Terran Colonial Alliance, Ver's mission was clear: assess the threat level and determine whether diplomatic relations were viable. He inched closer to what appeared to be a narrow fissure in the rock face. The slightest movement in his peripheral vision was his only warning before the ground beneath him gave way. A hidden pressure plate. Clever. The net sprang from concealed compartments in the surrounding rocks, enveloping him before he could reach for his pulse rifle. Ver cursed silently as he tumbled, suspended in the metallic mesh that tightened with each struggle. "Don't bother," came a cold, feminine voice. "The more you fight, the tighter it constricts." Ver craned his neck to see a tall, lean figure approaching with an unmistakable air of authority. Her skin was a rich blue-green with intricate crimson markings across her forehead and cheeks. Her eyes, large and glowing with an intense reddish-pink hue, regarded him with undisguised contempt. The warrior's posture spoke of years of combat training, her long-fingered hands resting casually on a crystalline spear that hummed with latent energy. The crack, running down its handle, gleamed an unnatural blue in the harsh sunlight. "You're a long way from your kind, human," she said, circling him slowly. "Did you think we wouldn't detect your approach? Your breathing alone echoes through these canyons like thunder." Ver kept his expression neutral. "I'm not here to—" The slap came without warning, a vicious, open-handed strike that split his lip and sent blood spattering onto the dusty rock beneath him. The coppery taste filled his mouth as he registered the burning sensation spreading across his cheek. "That's for being human," she spat, wiping her hand on her armor as if touching him had contaminated her. Ver didn't flinch. Instead, he felt a cold smile spread across his bloodied lips as he met her gaze unflinchingly. "Then you'll love my next trick." Her eyes narrowed dangerously. "And what might that be?" "Taking me to your elders," he replied calmly. "Because they'll want to hear what I have to say before they decide what to do with me." The warrior, Keisha of the Crimson Hunt, as Ver would later learn, considered him for a long moment. Then, with a gesture that was equal parts elegant and threatening, she commanded her subordinates to cut him down from the net. As Ver dropped heavily to the ground, she pressed the tip of her crystalline spear against his throat. "Walk," she ordered. "And know that if you attempt anything at all, this spear will find its way through your spine before your human reflexes can even register the pain." Ver nodded once, then turned to face the hidden entrance to the Zeli Ara settlement. The slightest hint of satisfaction played at the corners of his mouth. Step 1 complete. Infiltration successful. The journey into the heart of the Zeli Ara stronghold was a disorienting experience that Ver committed meticulously to memory. They descended through narrow, twisting tunnels that defied human architectural logic, moving in 3 dimensions rather than 2. Passages suddenly opened into vast, cathedral-like chambers with ceilings that disappeared into darkness, only to narrow again into corridors barely wide enough for Ver's shoulders. The walls themselves seemed alive, pulsing with bioluminescent panels that cast a blue-white light that made the carved reliefs depicting ancient Zeli Ara battles appear to move. The air grew cooler as they descended, carrying unfamiliar scents, something like cinnamon mixed with ozone. Curious Zeli Ara, children with smaller, less developed cranial ridges, peered from side passages, their pink eyes wide with fascination at the sight of a human. Some pointed, while others made gestures Ver couldn't interpret. One brave youngster reached out to touch Ver's exposed forearm before being sharply reprimanded by Keisha. "Don't touch it," she hissed. "Their kind spreads like a virus." Ver noted the pronoun. It, not him. Dehumanization, the first step in justifying violence against an enemy. A tactic as old as conflict itself. They arrived at what Ver assumed was a guest-holding cell. A circular chamber with a single entrance and no windows. A simple pallet lay in one corner, alongside a small basin filled with clear water. Practical accommodations for a prisoner they weren't sure whether to execute or release. "Stay here," Keisha commanded, holding her cracked spear before her. "Don't explore. Don't attempt communication with anyone. The council will convene to decide your fate." "And how long might that take?" Ver asked, maintaining an air of casual indifference as he surveyed his surroundings. "As long as necessary," she replied curtly. "Be grateful we didn't kill you on sight, human." Ver watched her leave, noting the slight limp in her right leg. An old injury. Perhaps. Information that might prove useful later, once alone. He carefully cleaned his split lip with water from the basin, assessing his situation. The cell was sophisticated. No visible lock mechanism, likely controlled remotely. The walls, though appearing roughly hewn, contained monitoring devices cleverly disguised as mineral formations. He sat cross-legged on the pallet, closed his eyes, and regulated his breathing. To any observer, he appeared to be resting. In reality, he was mapping every detail of his journey here, calculating distances, noting guard positions, and formulating escape routes. Not that he intended to escape, not yet. First, he needed to understand the Zeli Ara. Only then could he determine whether they represented a threat or an opportunity for the Alliance. Hours passed before the distinctive sound of footsteps approached. Ver opened his eyes to find Keisha standing at the entrance, flanked by two larger Zeli Ara warriors with more elaborate facial markings. "The council will see you now," she announced. "Remember that every word you speak could be your last." Ver rose smoothly to his feet, ignoring the stiffness in his muscles. "I look forward to meeting them." The council chamber was an architectural marvel, a vast, hemispherical space carved from a single, massive geode. The crystalline walls refracted light in dazzling patterns across the polished stone floor. 12 elder Zeli Ara sat in a semicircle on elevated seats, their skin darker and more heavily marked than their younger counterparts. Their eyes, ranging from deep crimson to brilliant magenta, all fixed on Ver as he was led to the center of the chamber. Keisha stepped forward, bowing deeply before addressing the assembly. "Honored elders, I present the human intruder captured in the Forbidden Gorge. It was fully armed, clearly on a reconnaissance mission." "Thank you." Keisha of the Crimson Hunt, spoke the central figure, evidently the leader. Her voice carried both age and authority. "You have served the council well." Ver maintained a respectful posture, but kept his eyes level, refusing to appear submissive. This was a delicate moment, one that would set the tone for all that followed. "What say you, human?" the elder continued, addressing Ver directly. "Why do we find you skulking through our sacred canyons?" Ver chose his words carefully. "I am Major Verrett Jarrett of the Terran Colonial Alliance. I was sent to assess your civilization and determine the potential for peaceful coexistence between our peoples." A ripple of murmurs spread through the council. One elder, with particularly elaborate scarification across his brow, leaned forward. "You infiltrate our territory armed for combat, yet speak of peace. Your human duplicity is as transparent as it is insulting." "I came prepared for self-defense," Ver countered calmly. Your reputation for hostility toward outsiders precedes you, but my mission is assessment, not aggression. Keisha stepped forward, her posture rigid with indignation. It lies. We found surveillance equipment and weapons calibrated for Zeli Ara physiology. This is clearly the prelude to a larger incursion. Ver turned slightly to face her. Standard protocol for first contact scenarios. Every species makes the same mistake, assuming humans represent a threat when we're simply being thorough. You've made that mistake too. Keisha of the Crimson Hunt. Her hand flew to her spear, but a gesture from the lead elder halted her movement. You speak our language fluently, observed another council member, his tone less hostile. How long have you been studying us? Long enough to know that killing me would violate your own sacred law of judgment without knowledge. Ver replied, Your traditions demand that you understand a potential enemy before condemning them. I'm simply asking for the same courtesy your ancestors would have granted. This calculated statement caused visible discomfort among the elders. Ver had done his homework. The ancient Zeli Ara texts, fragments of which had been recovered from abandoned outposts, spoke of this principle as fundamental to their judicial system. After a tense silence, the lead elder raised her hand. The human speaks correctly about our laws. We will deliberate on this matter in private. She fixed Ver with a penetrating stare. Until we reach a decision, you will remain in confinement, Keisha. As the one who captured this creature, you will be responsible for its conduct while in our realm. Keisha's posture stiffened, clearly unhappy with this assignment. As the council commands, she replied through gritted teeth. As Ver was led away, he caught fragments of the heated debate already beginning among the elders. Some advocated for immediate execution, others for interrogation, and a few, just a few, for caution and further assessment. It wasn't much, but it was a start, a crack in their unity, much like the one in Keisha's ceremonial spear, and cracks could be widened. 3 days passed in relative monotony. Ver was confined to his cell, but treated with basic dignity. Food, strange, gelatinous substances with unexpected flavors, was provided regularly. Keisha checked on him periodically, always maintaining a careful distance, her disdain evident in every clipped instruction or warning. Ver used this time to observe the patterns of life within the settlement. The changing of guards, the routines of food delivery, the distant sounds of training exercises. He noted that despite their technological advancement, the Zeli Ara maintained a deeply ritualistic society. Certain passages could only be traversed at specific times, corresponding to the position of Harlan's dual suns. Prayer-like gatherings occurred at regular intervals, centered around crystalline formations, similar to the one in the council chamber. On the third day, the routine was broken by the sound of running footsteps. Keisha burst into his cell, her usual composure fractured. Her breathing was rapid, her eyes wider than Ver had seen before. "Get up," she commanded, tossing a pulse rifle and tactical gear onto his pallet. "We're under attack." Ver rose quickly, instantly alert. "Who's attacking?" "Renegade forces from the eastern enclaves," she replied, checking her own weapons. "They've breached the outer defenses and are heading for the Crystal Heart. If they shatter the Heart's base, the entire canyon system will collapse." Ver quickly donned the tactical gear, noting that it had been adjusted to fit human proportions. "Why arm me? I could turn on you." Keisha's eyes narrowed. "These renegades are well-trained and numerous. We have few warriors stationed in this sector." She gestured to the pulse rifle. "Consider it a test of your species' worth. Prove you're more than just talking vermin." Ver checked the weapon, fully charged and operational. A significant show of trust, however reluctant. "What's the plan?" "Defend the Crystal Heart at all costs," she replied, already moving toward the exit. "Follow me, stay close, and try not to get killed before you can be of use." They moved swiftly through the tunnels, joining a small contingent of Zeli-Ara warriors, preparing defensive positions. Ver immediately noted their disadvantage. Fewer than 20 defenders against what appeared to be a force at least 3 times that size, based on the communication chatter. "We need to split our forces," Ver said, analyzing the layout of the passageways leading to the Crystal Heart Chamber. "A direct confrontation at the main entrance will fail." Keisha looked skeptical but motioned for him to continue. "2 teams," Ver explained, pointing to a holographic map one of the warriors had projected. "The larger group creates a diversion at the main approach. Meanwhile, a smaller team, you and I, can use that maintenance tunnel to access the heart chamber from behind." "The Whispering Passage," Keisha looked incredulous. "It's too narrow, and the sound distortions make communication impossible." "Which is exactly why they won't expect it," Ver countered. "We can position ourselves behind their advance force and catch them in a crossfire." The Zeli-Ara warriors exchanged uncertain glances. But time was running short. The distant sounds of energy weapons and shouts were growing closer. "Fine," Keisha decided abruptly. "Torval, take the main defense. We'll circle through the Whispering Passage." She fixed Ver with a hard stare. "If this is a trick to escape or betray us, your death will be legendary in its suffering." Ver nodded grimly. "Noted." The Whispering Passage deserved its name. The narrow tunnel, barely wide enough for Ver's shoulders, curved and twisted through the living rock in ways that defied conventional spatial awareness. Every sound, their breathing, the soft footfalls, even the subtle shifting of their equipment, was amplified and distorted, bouncing back at them from unexpected angles. Ver noticed Keisha's limp becoming more pronounced as they navigated the difficult terrain. The crystalline spear she carried seemed to respond to the acoustic anomalies, humming at different frequencies as they progressed. The crack along its shaft occasionally pulsed with blue-white energy, like a heartbeat. "Your spear," Ver whispered during a brief rest. "It's damaged." Keisha's expression darkened. "It is not damaged. It is evolving." She ran her fingers along the crack reverently. "This is the spear of ancestral remembrance. The fissure appeared during my rite of ascension, when I faced the canyon crawler that gave me this." She gestured to her leg. Ver nodded, understanding the cultural significance. The weapon wasn't merely a tool, but a symbol of heritage, possibly even believed to contain the essence of her ancestors. The crack, rather than representing weakness, symbolized her personal journey and growth. This insight gave him an idea. "We're close to the heart chamber's rear entrance," Keisha whispered, as they approached a faint, blue glow emanating from a curved passage ahead. "The renegades will be focusing on the main entrance. We'll have the element of surprise, but it won't last long." Ver assessed their options quickly. "I'll create a diversion. Make it look like I'm surrendering. That should draw their attention while you position yourself for a strike from above." Keisha studied him skeptically. "You would risk yourself as bait." "It's the logical play," Ver replied simply. "They'll hesitate before shooting a human, an unexpected variable. That hesitation is our advantage." After a moment's consideration, Keisha nodded. "If you betray us, I will personally ensure that my death will be legendary." Ver finished with a grim smile. "So you've mentioned." The Crystal Heart Chamber was a breathtaking space. A natural cavern expanded and refined into a sacred site. The central feature was a massive crystalline formation that rose from floor to ceiling, pulsing with blue-white light in a rhythm that indeed resembled a heartbeat. The base of the crystal was embedded in an elaborately carved stone platform, surrounded by a shallow pool of clear water that reflected and amplified the crystal's glow. Ver counted 8 renegade Zeli-Ara. Their armor styled differently from Keisha's faction, darker, with sharp, angular patterns in red rather than the flowing crimson lines of the canyon dwellers. They had established positions around the chamber, with 2 working on what appeared to be an explosive device near the crystal's base. Ver took a deep breath, stowed his weapon, and stepped into the open, hands raised. "I surrender!" he called out, his voice echoing dramatically in the sacred space. The effect was immediate. Every renegade warrior turned toward him, weapons raised but not firing, exactly as he'd predicted. Their confusion at finding a human in the heart of their enemy's territory created the perfect moment of hesitation. From above, Keisha launched herself from a concealed position in the chamber's upper reaches. Her crystalline spear caught the light as she descended, momentarily blinding the nearest renegades. She struck with deadly precision, incapacitating two warriors before they could react. Ver didn't waste the opportunity. In a fluid motion, he drew his concealed pulse rifle and fired, not at the warriors, but at the support structure holding up their explosive device. The blast knocked it off balance, sending the renegades scrambling to save their sabotage attempt. What followed was a chaotic melee. Ver rolled to avoid a barrage of energy bolts, returning fire from behind a crystalline outcropping. Keisha moved with astonishing speed, despite her injury, her spear leaving trails of light as it cut through the air. A burly renegade charged Ver, clearly recognizing him as the tactical weak point. Ver sidestepped, using the warrior's momentum to send him crashing into a column. But the renegade recovered quickly, drawing a vibroblade that hummed with malicious intent. Ver barely avoided the first slash, feeling the air sizzle where the blade passed inches from his face. He countered with a sweep to the warrior's legs, temporarily unbalancing him. But the Zeli Ara's superior strength made hand-to-hand combat a dangerous proposition. The renegade lunged again, and this time Ver couldn't fully evade. The blade sliced across his upper arm, leaving a burning gash, gritting his teeth against the pain. Ver grabbed the warrior's extended arm and used a leverage throw he'd learned in alliance combat training. The renegade's greater mass worked against him as he sailed through the air, crashing into the central pool with a spectacular splash. Meanwhile, Keisha had engaged the leader of the sabotage team, their weapons clashing in sparks of energy. The renegade had managed to reset the explosive device, the countdown now visibly active on its display. Ver fought his way toward the device, taking a glancing hit from an energy bolt that left his left side numb. He reached the platform just as the renegade knocked Keisha back with a powerful blow. The warrior turned toward Ver, raising his weapon for a killing shot. In that critical moment, Ver had to choose: disable the bomb or defend himself. He chose the former, diving for the device even as the energy bolt seared past his shoulder. His fingers worked the deactivation sequence he recognized from Alliance explosive ordnance training. 3 seconds to spare. The renegade roared in fury, charging toward Ver with his weapon transformed into a blade mode. Ver rolled away from the bomb, drawing the warrior from the crystal heart. As the renegade raised his blade for a killing blow, a crystalline spear erupted from his chest. Keisha stood behind him, her expression fierce and unforgiving. The skirmish ended as quickly as it had begun. The remaining renegades, seeing their leaders fallen and their plan thwarted, retreated toward the main entrance, directly into the crossfire of Torval's defensive team. In the sudden quiet that followed, Ver became aware of his injuries: the slash on his arm, the energy burn on his side, numerous smaller cuts and bruises. But it was Keisha who looked worse. Her breathing was labored, her eyes glazed with pain. A deep gash across her torso leaked dark blue fluid, Zeli Ara blood. Without hesitation, Ver moved to her side, lowering her gently to a sitting position against one of the crystal formations. From his tactical gear, he produced a medical kit. What are you doing?" Keisha asked, her voice weak with blood loss. "Treating your wound," Ver replied matter-of-factly, applying a coagulant gel to the gash. "It's deep, but hasn't hit anything vital. You'll live, but you need to stay still." Keisha watched with bewilderment as Ver efficiently cleaned and sealed her wound. "You don't always want to kill us, do you?" Ver's hands paused momentarily before continuing their work. No more than you always want to kill me, he replied quietly. Despite what you've been taught about humans. Keisha's eyes, usually so hard and contemptuous, showed a flicker of uncertainty. Perhaps I was mistaken. Ver finished treating her wound, then tended to his own injuries. Around them, other Zeli-Ara warriors entered the chamber, securing the area and assessing the damage. Their expressions upon seeing Ver treating Keisha ranged from shock to outrage to grudging respect. Torval, the massive warrior who had led the main defense, approached them. His towering 3-meter frame was imposing even by Zeli-Ara standards. His dark blue skin, covered in elaborate tattoos, documenting his battle victories. The human fought well, he acknowledged gruffly. And Keisha lives because of his actions. The council must be informed, another warrior added. If this creature saved the Crystal Heart, it can no longer be considered a simple prisoner. As Ver helped Keisha to her feet, supporting her weight, he caught her studying him with an expression he couldn't quite interpret, somewhere between suspicion and fascination. The dynamics had shifted. He was no longer just a captive human, but something more complex, something that didn't fit neatly into their preconceptions. And complexity, Ver knew, was the first step toward understanding. The aftermath of the Crystal Heart battle brought significant changes to Ver's status within the Zeli-Ara community. He was moved from his cell to more comfortable quarters, still guarded, but with greater freedom of movement within defined areas of the settlement. The council, while still deliberating his ultimate fate, had acknowledged his role in defending their sacred site. Keisha, as she recovered from her injuries, maintained her role as his primary liaison, though her attitude had noticeably shifted. The open contempt had given way to wary curiosity. She began asking questions about human society, technology, and customs, ostensibly for intelligence purposes. But Ver sensed a genuine interest beneath the professional facade. For his part, Ver used this opportunity to learn more about Zeli-Ara culture. He discovered that their society was organized around a complex clan system, with bloodlines traced through ancestral combat achievements, rather than simple genetics. The Crystal Heart wasn't merely a sacred object, but the literal center of their civilization, a naturally occurring formation that somehow resonated with their unique physiology, strengthening their connection to their ancestors and to each other. 5 days after the battle, as Ver was studying a holographic representation of Zeli-Ara territorial boundaries, Keisha entered his quarters without the customary announcement. Her expression was grave. "The council has received troubling intelligence," she said without preamble. "Crathmore, the Shattered Storm, has united the renegade factions. He's gathering a force of over 1,500 warriors at the edge of the Grand Canyon Vista. Intelligence suggests he intends to claim the Vista as his sovereign territory and declare himself supreme ruler." Ver recognized the severity of the situation immediately. "The Vista overlooks your entire canyon network, doesn't it? Whoever controls it has tactical superiority over all Zeli-Ara settlements." Keisha nodded grimly. "The council has called an emergency session. Your presence is requested." The slight hesitation was telling. Not demanded or ordered, but requested. A subtle but significant change in his status. The council chamber was in chaos when they arrived. Elders argued vehemently with each other, while clan representatives shouted to be heard. The lead elder, whom Ver now knew as Matriarch Selena, raised her hands for silence as they entered. "The human arrives," she announced, bringing a temporary halt to the cacophony. "Since it has proven useful in tactical matters, perhaps it can offer insight into our current predicament." Ver stepped forward, maintaining a respectful but confident posture. "I understand Crathmore threatens your most strategic position. What defenses do you currently have at the Vista?" Torval, who had joined the council as the military representative, activated a holographic display of the canyon system. "A small garrison only, 30 warriors at most," The vista was considered impregnable due to the single approach route. We never anticipated an attack force of this magnitude. Several clan leaders began speaking at once, their voices overlapping in urgent debate. "We must meet them in open battle at the canyon mouth," declared one elder, his fist pounding the stone table. "Honor demands a direct confrontation." "Honor will not save us from slaughter," countered another. "We should abandon the vista and concentrate our defenses here, at the heart." Ver studied the map carefully, his mind calculating distances, terrain advantages, and tactical options. After several minutes of observation, he looked up to find the entire council watching him expectantly. "A direct confrontation with a force that size would be disastrous," he stated plainly. "You would be overwhelmed by sheer numbers, regardless of your warrior's individual skill." This blunt assessment caused an uproar among the more traditional clan leaders. "You suggest we abandon our ancestral ways of warfare?" demanded one particularly ornate elder. "That we hide like canyon crawlers rather than face our enemy?" "I suggest you win," Ver replied calmly. "Crathmore expects a traditional Zeliara defense, a glorious stand at the canyon mouth where his superior numbers will eventually prevail. Instead, you should fight asymmetrically. Divide his forces. Wear them down with hit-and-run attacks throughout the canyon system. Set traps and ambushes that prevent him from forming a cohesive fighting force." The council chamber erupted in debate once more. Many elders were clearly uncomfortable with the suggestion of abandoning traditional battle formations for what they perceived as dishonorable tactics. Others saw the practical wisdom in Ver's approach, but hesitated to adopt human military thinking. Torval, surprisingly, spoke in Ver's favor. "The human strategy has merit. We have exhausted conventional options. Crathmore knows our traditional tactics and has prepared accordingly. Perhaps unconventional methods are now necessary." Keisha added her voice, her position as the one who had fought alongside Ver, giving her words additional weight. "I have witnessed the human's tactical effectiveness firsthand. His approach saved the Crystal Heart when traditional defenses might have failed." After hours of heated debate, a compromise was reached. They would adopt Ver's overall strategy, but implement it in a way that maintained Zeliara combat traditions. 3 layers of defense would be established. First, harassment operations to disrupt Crathmore's supply lines and prevent his forces from advancing as a unified body. Second, ambush zones throughout the canyon network, where smaller Zeliara units could engage portions of Crathmore's forces on more even terms. Third, a strike team led by Keisha and Ver would infiltrate Crathmore's command center through supposedly impassable tunnel systems, targeting the leadership directly. As the council session ended, Ver found himself working alongside Torval and Keisha to train the Zeliara warriors in these new tactics. He taught them to use the unique acoustics of the canyon system to create sound traps that would disorient the enemy. He showed them how to set up kill zones, where the narrow passages would negate Crathmore's numerical advantage. Throughout these preparations, Ver noticed Keisha watching him intently, absorbing every technique and strategy with focused determination. She still questioned and challenged him frequently. But there was a new dimension to their interaction, a growing professional respect that occasionally hinted at something more. The day before the operation was set to begin, Ver found Keisha alone in the training chamber, practicing a particularly difficult maneuver with her crystalline spear. Despite her healing injuries, her movements were fluid and precise, the spear leaving tracers of light in its wake. "Your form is excellent," Ver commented as he entered. "But you're favoring your right side to protect the wound. In combat, that telegraphs your movements." Keisha paused, lowering her spear. "You notice much human." "Ver," he corrected gently. "My name is Ver." She considered this for a moment, then nodded. "Ver." The name sounded different in her accent, with a rolling emphasis on the R that was oddly pleasing to his ear. "Are you concerned about tomorrow?" he asked, moving to retrieve his own training weapon from the rack. "Concerned? No. Ready? Yes." She watched as he selected a staff approximately the weight and balance of his pulse rifle. "Your plan is unconventional, but effective. I think it plays to your strengths," Ver explained, beginning his own practice routine. Zeli Ara warriors excel in close-quarters combat and have intimate knowledge of this terrain. Krathmore wants to negate those advantages with numbers. We're simply ensuring he can't. Keisha was quiet for a moment, observing his movements. "The Council still debates whether to grant you citizenship or expel you once this crisis is resolved." Ver executed a complex sequence of strikes before responding. "And what do you think they should do?" "Once, I would have advocated for your immediate execution," she admitted candidly. "Now, I am less certain." Ver smiled slightly. "Progress. Do not mistake uncertainty for acceptance." Ver," she warned, though without the venom her voice had once carried. "You remain an outsider, and outsiders have brought only suffering to the Zeli Ara in the past." "History is a pattern," Ver acknowledged, "but patterns can be broken. Tomorrow may show that this outsider brings something different." Keisha resumed her practice, but Ver noticed she was now consciously correcting the imbalance he had pointed out. A small adjustment, but significant. She was listening, learning, adapting. Just as he was. The operation began before dawn. The first phase, harassment of Krathmore's supply lines, went precisely as planned. Small, elite teams of Zeli Ara warriors struck at the Renegade's support columns, destroying bridges and ambushing ammunition transports. As predicted, Krathmore was forced to divert significant portions of his force to protect his supply chain, fragmenting his once unified army. The second phase proved more challenging. The main Zeli Ara force engaged in a fighting retreat, drawing segments of Krathmore's army deeper into the canyon network. Carefully positioned ambush teams struck from concealed positions, inflicting casualties before melting away into side passages. When Krathmore's forces pursued, they triggered rock slides that Keisha's team had rigged days earlier. Ver coordinated from a command center established in a secondary cavern, using a sophisticated communication network to track enemy movements and direct Zeli Ara teams to weak points in the Renegade formation. Torval executed the battlefield commands with precision, adapting the human tactics to Zeli Ara combat style with impressive effectiveness. By midday, Krathmore's once imposing force was scattered throughout the canyon system, communications disrupted, unit cohesion broken. The time had come for the third phase, the strike at the command center. Ver joined Keisha and 6 elite warriors at the entrance to what the Zeli Ara called the Impossible Passage, a treacherous tunnel system that supposedly couldn't be traversed. The network of caves had been declared off-limits generations ago after several exploration teams had disappeared without trace. "These tunnels connect directly to the cavern Krathmore is using as his command post," Keisha explained, as they prepared their equipment. "But the passages are unstable and filled with sensory distortions that drive most Zeli Ara to madness." Ver checked his modified pulse rifle, ensuring the energy cell was fully charged. "Then it's fortunate you have someone who isn't Zeli Ara with you." The passage deserved its ominous reputation. They crawled through spaces so tight that Ver's back scraped against the ceiling while his chest pressed against the floor. They navigated absolute darkness, relying on touch and the faint glow of Keisha's spear. At times, the acoustic properties of the caverns created hallucination-inducing sound patterns, whispers that seemed to form words, echoes that returned from impossible directions, vibrations that resonated with specific frequencies in the brain. Ver found himself uniquely suited to this environment. His human neurology was different enough from Zeli Ara physiology that the sensory distortions affected him less severely. He took the lead, guiding the team through particularly difficult sections, helping the warriors manage the psychological impact of the disorienting surroundings. After what felt like hours, they reached a vertical shaft that, according to their intelligence, would emerge behind Crathmore's position. The climb was arduous, nearly 100 meters of almost sheer rock face, with minimal handholds and the constant threat of falling debris. Ver's muscles burned with the effort, his fingers bleeding from the sharp crystal edges embedded in the stone. Beside him, Keisha climbed with grim determination, her injured leg occasionally trembling with strain. Yet, neither spoke a word of complaint, each understanding what failure would mean for the Zeli-Ara civilization below. They emerged onto a narrow ledge overlooking a vast cavern. Below them, Crathmore's command center buzzed with frantic activity. Communications officers shouted reports of ambushes and lost units. Field commanders argued over deployment strategies. And in the center, directing it all, stood Crathmore himself, a massive Zeli-Ara with jet-black skin marked with jagged white patterns that resembled lightning strikes. His left eye was replaced by a cybernetic implant that glowed an eerie red, constantly scanning readouts projected directly into his visual field. Ver signaled silently to the team, indicating their approach route. 2 snipers would remain on the ledge, providing cover fire. The rest would descend to the cavern floor, using the stalactites as cover. Then, strike directly at Crathmore and his command staff. The descent was the most dangerous part of the mission. Any sound, any dislodged pebble, could alert the sentries below. Ver moved with exaggerated care, testing each handhold before committing his weight. Keisha followed close behind, her breathing controlled and measured despite the strain on her injured leg. They were halfway down when disaster struck. One of the warriors, Sentak, the youngest of their team, lost his grip on a crumbling handhold. He caught himself before falling, but his equipment harness scraped loudly against the rock face. Below, a sentry looked up sharply, his hand moving to his communication device. Ver acted instinctively. He released his hold, dropping the remaining distance to land directly on the sentry. They crashed to the ground together, Ver using his momentum to drive the Zeli-Ara's face into the stone floor, stunning him instantly, in one fluid motion. Ver disabled the warrior's communication device and dragged him behind a crystal formation. But the commotion had drawn attention. 2 more sentries approached, weapons raised. From above, the snipers opened fire, their energy bolts striking with pinpoint accuracy. 1 sentry fell immediately. The other managed to trigger an alarm before a bolt from Keisha's position silenced him permanently. The element of surprise lost. The strike team abandoned stealth for speed. They descended rapidly, forming a defensive perimeter as they moved toward Crathmore's position. The command center erupted into chaos. Junior officers scrambled for weapons, while senior commanders established a protective formation around their leader. Ver and Keisha fought side by side, their movements complementing each other with a synchronicity that belied their different species and training. Where Ver was quick and precise, targeting vulnerable points with surgical strikes, Keisha was powerful and fluid, her crystalline spear creating arcs of energy that incapacitated multiple opponents with each swing. They carved a path through the defenders, the rest of the strike team forming a wedge behind them. Crathmore's personal guard, 6 elite warriors with advanced energy shields, formed the final barrier between them and their target. "Surrender! Crathmore!" Keisha called out, her voice carrying across the cavern. "Your forces are scattered, your plan in ruins. End this without further bloodshed." Crathmore's cybernetic eye pulsed with malevolent light as he laughed. "Surrender. When I stand at the threshold of ultimate power, the vista will be mine, and from it, I will reign supreme over all Zeli-Ara territories." He gestured sharply, and his guard attacked as one. The battle that followed was brief, but intense. Energy bolts crisscrossed the command center, crystalline blades clashed with shields, and the air filled with the acrid scent of ozone and blood. Ver found himself facing 2 guards simultaneously, their coordinated attacks driving him back toward a precipice. He ducked under a horizontal slash, countering with a low sweep that momentarily unbalanced one attacker. The second pressed the advantage, his energy blade slicing through Ver's tactical vest and grazing the skin beneath. Pain flared across Ver's chest, but he channeled it into focus rather than distraction. He feinted left, then executed a combat roll to the right, coming up behind his attackers. Before they could turn, he fired two precise shots, one to disable the shield generator on the first guard's belt, the second to incapacitate the warrior with a stun blast to the neural cluster at the base of his neck. The remaining guard roared in fury, charging Ver with reckless abandon. Ver sidestepped at the last moment, using the guard's momentum to send him careening into a control console. The impact shattered the delicate crystalline interface, sending shards flying and electrical discharges arcing across the command center. Meanwhile, Keisha had engaged Crathmore directly. Their duel was a spectacular display of Zeli Ara combat arts, her crystalline spear against his energy blade. Traditional techniques clashing with innovations Crathmore had developed during his exile. They seemed evenly matched until Crathmore activated a secondary function in his cybernetic eye, projecting a blinding flash directly at Keisha. Temporarily blinded, she faltered, her defense opening just enough for Crathmore to strike. His blade slashed toward her exposed neck, only to be intercepted by Ver's pulse rifle, modified to function as a staff. The energy blade bit deep into the weapon's housing, fusing circuits and rendering it useless, but it had served its purpose. Keisha recovered, and in that critical moment, drove her spear through Crathmore's shoulder. The renegade leader howled in pain and rage as he staggered backward, crashing into the holographic terrain display. Ver was on him instantly, disarming him with a precise strike to the wrist and forcing him to his knees with a leveraged hold against his injured shoulder. "It's over, Crathmore," Ver stated flatly, maintaining the painful submission hold. "Order your forces to stand down." Blood leaking from his wounded shoulder, his cybernetic eye flickering with damage. Crathmore glared at Ver with undisguised hatred. "You, a human, dare to lay hands on me? I am the surviving heir of the Shattered Storm lineage. My ancestors." "Your ancestors would be ashamed," Keisha interrupted, her spear tip pressed against his throat. "You violated our most sacred laws, attacked our most holy sites. And for what? Personal glory?" Around them, the remaining members of the strike team had subdued or eliminated Crathmore's command staff. The sophisticated communication system that had coordinated his forces now lay in ruins, ensuring that even if some renegade units remained intact, they would be operating blind and disorganized. Crathmore's capture marked the turning point of the conflict. Without central leadership, the scattered renegade forces fell into disarray. Some surrendered immediately when word spread of their leader's defeat. Others attempted to continue fighting, but were systematically eliminated by Torval's forces, now able to concentrate on individual pockets of resistance rather than facing a unified army. Ver helped Keisha back to the Zeli Ara settlement, supporting her weight as they traversed the main canyon. Her wound from Crathmore's blade was serious, but not life-threatening. A deep gash across her chest that would add another honorable scar to her collection. Despite her obvious pain, her expression carried a fierce pride. "You saved not just the Crystal Heart," she said softly, as they approached the settlement's entrance, "but the soul of the Zeli Ara." Ver shook his head slightly. "We saved it together. Your people fought brilliantly once they adapted to the new tactics." "Our tactics," she corrected, surprising him. "Not human, not Zeli Ara, but something new, something better." The council convened an emergency session to determine the fate of Crathmore and his captured lieutenants. But there was another matter on their agenda, one that concerned Ver directly. Now that the immediate threat had passed, his status needed to be resolved. Some council members still advocated for his expulsion, arguing that regardless of his assistance, he remained an outsider with unknown loyalties. Others, including Torval and several warriors who had fought alongside him, spoke in his favor, citing his courage and the effectiveness of his strategies. Keisha, her wound freshly treated and bandaged, spoke last. "I once slapped this human and told him it was for being human," she said, her voice carrying clearly through the chamber. "I believed, as many still do, that humans represent a threat to our way of life. But I have fought beside Vergeret. I have seen him risk his life not just for his own survival, but for our sacred heart, for our people." She turned to face Ver directly. "You asked what I thought the council should do with you. Now I answer. I believe you have earned the right to temporary harmony among us, with the understanding that any violation means your life is forfeit, without recourse." The council deliberated for hours before reaching their decision. Ver was granted provisional citizenship, not full clan membership, but a status that allowed him freedom within Zeli-Ara territory and the right to participate in certain aspects of their society. He would remain under Keisha's supervision, her responsibility for his conduct continuing indefinitely. In the days that followed, Ver helped the Zeli-Ara implement improved defensive measures throughout their territory. He shared alliance techniques for early warning systems and suggested modifications to their traditional patrol routes that would provide better coverage with fewer warriors. In return, the Zeli-Ara began teaching him aspects of their culture that had never been shared with outsiders, their complex language with its tonal subtleties, the significance of their scarification rituals, the true history of their arrival on Harlan generations ago. 2 weeks after Crathmore's defeat, a celebration was held in the Grand Assembly Cavern, a space Ver had never been permitted to enter before. All the clans gathered, their ceremonial garments creating a spectacular display of color and light as they moved through traditional dances that told the story of their victory. At the height of the celebration, Keisha approached Ver. She wore formal attire that emphasized her status as a high-ranking warrior, deep blue robes with crystalline accents that caught and refracted the ambient light. In her hands, she carried a ceremonial spear, its shaft a deeper blue than her everyday weapon, with the characteristic crack now inlaid with luminescent material that pulsed in rhythm with the distant crystal heart. "Vergeret," she announced formally, her voice carrying across the suddenly quiet assembly. "The Council of Elders recognizes your contribution to the preservation of Zeli-Ara civilization. By unanimous decision, you are hereby named blood brother to our people, with all rights and responsibilities thereof." She presented the spear to him with a formal bow. Ver accepted it with equal ceremony, feeling its weight, both physical and symbolic, in his hands. "From this day forward," continued Matriarch Selena, rising from her council seat, "you shall be known among us as Ver of the Crimson Alliance, blood brother to Keisha of the Crimson Hunt, friend to the Zeli-Ara people." The assembly erupted in applause, tentative at first, then building to a thunderous expression of acceptance. Ver stood speechless, the reality of what had just occurred slowly sinking in. He was no longer an outsider, no longer merely tolerated. He had become family. Later, as the celebration continued around them, Ver and Keisha stood on a high balcony overlooking the canyon system. Harlan's twin suns were setting, casting the landscape in shades of gold and crimson that reflected brilliantly off the crystalline formations embedded in the rock walls. "Blood brother," Ver mused, still getting accustomed to the title. "What exactly does that entail?" Keisha's expression was more relaxed than he had ever seen it. The perpetual wariness temporarily set aside. "It means you are no longer stranger, but kin. Your blood and mine now flow in a single stream, at least in the eyes of our traditions." Ver nodded, watching the play of light across the distant mesas. "And what happens when the Alliance eventually makes official contact? When they send diplomats and trade representatives?" Then, you will be our bridge, she replied simply. The one who stands between worlds and helps each understand the other. They fell into comfortable silence, watching as the last rays of sunlight painted the canyon in final, brilliant hues before surrendering to the encroaching night. On the stone railing before them, someone had carved a message in both Terran Standard and Zeli Aura script. You like the last trick? Prepare for the next one. Ver smiled, and beside him, Keisha did the same, both understanding that a new era of alliance between humans and Zeli Aura was just beginning. There would be countless challenges ahead, cultural misunderstandings to navigate, diplomatic hurdles to overcome. But in this moment, watching the double sunset of Harlan, those challenges seemed not like obstacles, but opportunities, chances to build something unprecedented and valuable between their peoples. To the next trick, then, Ver said softly, raising his ceremonial spear in salute to the fading light. Keisha touched her spear to his, the crystalline tips creating a brief, brilliant flash where they met. To the next trick, she agreed. And all that follow.